Shabbos. This week is Pashas Balak. I want to talk about a certain topic which has a lot of shaykhs to many things we spoke about. In the end, we'll connect it Bez Hashem to what has to do with Nida. We can learn out from here to Nida, but more about Inyan Erayis. And there's a little noise in the background because of construction, but we'll do our best to be the Shemaya. So it says this week in this passage it says that the Balak called Bilam to be Mekal Klal Yisrael, and Bilam was not able to be Mekal Klal Yisrael. In the end, Bilam gave Eitzah for Balak to be Machshul Klal Yisrael in Znus. And Chazal say, as we'll see, that this was the first time the Umas Ha'olam were Nichshel in Znus. As a formal structure, at least Barabim. Until then, they were actually Nizer in Yonei's Nuts and Pritzes, even in places where it's mutter. So, I want to get a little bit deeper insight into this, and Hashem, see what we can take out. So, the Torah says, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, that when the Noach and his children and his family came into the Teva, Hashem said that you should not be mishamash, should not be intimate in the Teva. And Hashem had to be mad to them when they left the Teva, they could be intimate with their wives afterwards. But as long as they were in the Teva, they were not mutter to be with their wives. And Chazal say that there were three that were nichshel in this. And not only were the people usher to be intimate, even the behemoths and chayes were not able to be intimate. I'll say that shloish sham shebeteva, there were three that were mashamish who were intimate in Teva, and all of them got punished. The dog, the raven, and Cham ben Noach. The dog, and Chazal say that the Einish von Cham was that he was blind. He got his skin got punished. What does that mean? It means that's why they were black. I think it's Mefurish another place in Chazal that the Cham's children became black. I don't know if it means they were the first black people, but it could be, but definitely they were punished to be black. Fine. Why am I saying this over? Because this story that they were not intimate in the Teva, and there was the most of them were not intimate, and there were those that were actually affected the new world that was created after the Mabul. The world started over just like when Rishon started over with Noach. That time in the Teva was like in the mother's stomach, and that had an effect to the future generations. So Chazal say, Znus Gemara v'Dezorah, Znus the Beis Dina shall shame Geizri. The Znus that were Geizer on in Beis Dina shall shame. That's why they punished the Tamar with Sreifa. Why were they done Tamar with Sreifa? Because they were Nizir in those times. And this is Nus. And Taisa says, 1,000 times Yehuda, going back a little bit earlier, the times of Lot and his daughter, it says, the Gemara says, Lot shtei b'nei Esav, that Lot was in Skam Favera. And it says he was in Skam Favera, Poishim Mikashlabam, and they were in Skam Mitzvah, thinking Yelchibam. Zokt Taisis, that there's a machlekes in the Gemara if Ben Noach is aser to be intimate with his daughter. So according to Mandama, the whole thing is aser. We understand why is an avera for Lot to be with his daughter. But what kind of avera was it for Lot to be with his daughters if Ben Noach is mutter b'bita? So they freak Taisis. Zokt Taisis, I follow about the Amma. Mutter, even Mandam holds that it's mutter for Ben Noach to be with his daughter. For Pirshu ma'atzma ma'arayis. Even though it's mutter midin, they were goyzer themselves even on things that were mutter to be polish from arayis. So Loit was the scandal of Eder because they were all Bnei Noach were polish from arayis, and he was nichshel. So that's why he's called Niskav Lev. And we see how far things goes. That it says by Yaakov Avinu that when he met Rachel, Vayisa he kissed her, he hugged her. Vayisa as koiloi vayev, he picked up his koil and he cried. Everyone knows it. The pasuk, the Chazal on this. But there's another mahalach in Chazal. There's a Chazal over here. Interessant mahalach. Never heard of. Why did Yaakov Avinu cry? Shara, he saw Hanashim Slachshim. The people were talking. They were shmuzing. They were saying, "Wow!" They saw Yaakov Avinu kiss his cousin, and he says, "Why is this person coming to do a rise over here?" And they were showing him to us all of a sudden, Yaakov Avinu starts hugging and kissing a friend, a woman he's not married to in public, even though she was a priya, even though it was only chibuk v'nishuk. Still, and Menoich is not us to Menoich any of these things. Still, Rabbi Tzachsratzim points out, you see from here, also the same thing like Taisus, they will still punish themselves, and they made Gedorim and Siagim, not to come to any Mechshoilis, and Menoich will punish out Atzmum in Harayas. And the Sefer of the Pirish, Nachas Yaakov, on Rashi, Kubitz for the Sivis, he says, he brings another right to this, because it says by Rivka, psula v'ish lo yodah. She was a psula, and no one had any relations with her. Why does it have to say twice? If she was a psula, no one had relations with her. So Chazal say psula that she didn't have any relations kederach. They didn't go kederach, and v'lo yodah, even shloi kedarka, even from behind or whatever, even not the normal way. She wasn't. No one wasn't intimate with her. So zakta l'chayre ben Noach is not aser nos shloi kedarka. The Rambam Hilchos Melachim Perek Tes Halacha Zayin. So what's the chiddush? Elamai, they were Polish even things that were mutter for. That's why the Ma'ala for Rivka, the same thing by Rachel, and the same thing by Loit. All these cases we see that Bnei Noach were Polish even from Arayas, even for things that were mutter. They were very nizer in Arayas. Unbelievable. And that's why we find Bnei Yaakov, when they heard that Shem was Mezana with Dina, it says that v'chein lo yayasa ki v'lo asa v'Yisrael lishka v'spas Yaakov v'chein lo yayasa, and so shall be done. So Rashi brings down from Chazal la'anis is apsula she'umas goter atzum in arayis adei mabul. Again, that even though she was a psula, the umas were guiding themselves not to be mizana even with psulas. And here you go, Nachamal, they were nizer from all this stuff. So when did this whole thing stop? When did the Bnei Noach stop with this? This was on this week's parasha. When was it in Nifrat? It was in this week's parasha. It says, Rashi says that why did the Eibusha Pneimah, why the Hishra Shekolish Baruch Shechinasai al Goy Rasha, why the Eibusha be Masha Shechina on Bilom, Kadesh Lo Yeh Pischem Peh L'Umais, the Umas Elam shouldn't have a Pischem Peh, they shouldn't have a Taina oh, the Yidden gave Nevi'im, for us they didn't give Nevi'im. So the Eibishter was mabed in Nevi'im. What did he do? Not only wasn't he marked the Umas Olam, verkehrt, he did the opposite of what a Navi was supposed to do. A Navi is supposed to be marked in Umas Olam, supposed to bring them closer to Hashem. And what did he do? He was Poiritz Geiter Shal Olam. That until then they would go to Geiter Shal Arayis, and now all of a sudden through Bilam they destroyed the Gedarim and were Nifretz Hakal. Fine. Until now, we saw how the Umas Ha'olam would go to Be'arayas. But this is not so pashut, because as we saw in the Teva, that Noach, son Cham, was Pyrus Be'arayas, and that Prutzis that Noacham had, he started in the Teva, means to say he influenced the creation of the new world. The Teva was the place where the new world is created. And just like a baby in the mother's womb learned Third and everything gets prepared for the world, for his new life, so too the Teva was the place where everything got prepared. And Cham, in that time, which the Eibush should change the whole course of the world, there was no mechitzis like between the people and the Eibush. They saw Hashem said Noach was the Navi Elokim, and he said it's coming, and the Mabul came, and they came, and they saw everything. They knew Hashem said come in. All the animals came in. They walked like marched into the Teva. Everything was a dig. They saw that Hashem do everything. They were living on Hashem's word. Everything they knew Hashem's word, and they knew Hashem said not to be intimate with his wife. Went Cham, and he was pirates. That matzav, that momentum, and he destroyed the new happening of the new creation of the world. And that thing he created l'doris, a koyach of the Sitra Achar. He was the Nachash HaKadmoni. Cham himself became the Nachash HaKadmoni of the new world. And that's why we find in the Torah, even though we find again many places that the Bnei Noach we goes of Arayas and they were clean, but by Cham, Bnei Cham, we find the opposite. It says in the pasuk, Mitzrayim Yolad es Ludim es Na'anomim, all these names of children, es Halahovim, es Panaftuchim, es Sisim, es Kaslichim, Ashiyatzim Misham, from es Pasrisim, es Kaslichim, the two Ashiyatzim Misham, from these nations came out, Plishtim es Kaftorim. So what does it mean? Well, usually one family comes out of one family. The one family doesn't come out of two families. Zogt Rashi, Pasrisim v'eskaslichim, Ashiyatzim Misham Plishtim, Mishneim Yatzi. They went out of both nations. Shei Pasrisim v'eskaslichim, Mechlifim Mishkam L'Shosem. They would switch their wives. Elu la'elu v'Yatzi Misham Plishtim. So that's where the Plishtim come out of the children of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was a source of znus. And we find it says, "Ve'ela tolus Esav, he Edom. Esav lokach es noshav mibnois Canaan. Esav took his children, his wives, from Canaan. Es Odo bas Elon Achiti, es Elivama bas Ano bas Tziven Achivi." So what is this? Elivama bas Ano bas Tziven Achivi. Who is this woman? She had two fathers, bas Ano bas Tziven Achivi. What does this mean? Rashi that yes. This was these daughters of Canaan, Livama bas Ana bas Tziven Achivi, Malamed Shabbat Tziven al Kalasai. Tziven was intimate with his daughter-in-law, Eshes Ana, Yatzei Livama min Shneim. So Esav married the daughter, which was an example of princess of Bnei Canaan. They were Malamed. The pasuk is telling you about these things that tell you these families were mamzerim, and that's what they were interested in. So what do we find over here? Canaan's children, Alivama bas Ana bas Chivi, she was a Canaani, and we found from Mitzrayim's children, they were all Memzerim, and these children of who were these children? Mitzrayim and Canaan. Mitzrayim and Canaan were children of Chum. Chum was the one that brought Znus and priestess in the world. He also brought Cush, was his Bechor. Nimrod came out of Cush. He was the first one to be Gibitzai of Hashem, to be murdered in the Rebbeinu Shalom. That because he created this creation of Ra in the world. It all came from Chum. Fine. Okay. So even though Bnei Noach were Nizar, but Bnei Chum were not Nizar. They were Paris Barayas and Gidr Olam, as we find by Bnei Canaan and Bnei Mitzrayim. And we find in the later generations, in the times of Mountain Yitzis Mitzrayim, Abisha told the Yidden, Kimas Eretz Mitzrayim Asher Yishafna Bo Le'Sasi. You should not do like the actions of Mitzrayim. Kimas Eretz Canaan Asher Maybe Asher Shom Le'Sasi. You should not do like the actions of Eretz Canaan. And Chazal tell us, Rashi brings down from Teres Kahanim, and it says over there that Magid Shemasein Shematzrim Shekananim Mikol Kulam Mikol Yumas. And then Mitzrayim and Canaan were the most Mikolkul from all the Umas Olam, as we just saw. Their parents came from Canaan, from Chum, and they were all Kulam Amzeres, all Zoinim and Purutzim. And Rashi adds, "Va'oisim mokum sheyoshev Yisrael kol kol b'yahakol." In that place that the Yidden lived, which was Eretz Goshen, was the worst of the whole Mitzrayim. And then it says, "Ashani maybe." Ask him Rashi, "Maget she'oiseh amim shekav Yisrael mekukum yoisim mekulam." The Eretz Canaan was even worse than Mitzrayim. Ein Shom Mizrachi. That means to say, Mitzrayim and Canaan were terrible. The Mzerim. Goshen was worse than Mitzrayim. Though Mitzrayim and Canaan were the worst in the world. And Goshen was worse than Mitzrayim, and Canaan was worse than Goshen. And this is all what came out of the Teva, like we said. Those who were in the Teva had a good upbringing. They, the various generations, were Shomer until Bilam came along. And Chum, and let's not forget, Bilam was actually in Mitzrayim with Paray. So it seems like he arshened the midah from Paray, from Mitzrayim, and then he destroyed the whole world with it. He influenced the whole world with it. And not only that he didn't, not only that Bilam wasn't good that the Yidden, wasn't good the Goyim, he was a Nabi for them, he was Faket. He did make them do the opposite. Now, and for a while, I was very, very bothered by Chazal said the Klal Yisrael was not Peiritz Barayas in Mitzrayim. I didn't understand that because we find that Bnei Noach were Nizar, so the Mitzrayim watched themselves with Peiritz Barayas, or they were not Peiritz Barayas, they were Geizer. Bnei Noach were Geizer. But according to what we're seeing over here, it's not Kasha B'chlal. The Kasha doesn't start because Mitzrayim would take a Perutzim, not like most of the world. And Fakir, they were very, very parrots, and the Yidden were the place where the Yidden lived was even worse. And Mela was a great Zach that the Yidden were Nichshel than there in Mitzrayim. You see that Bilam, again, let's make the cheshbon. That Bilam, who was one of Paras Aitza gave he was machshel the whole world in Znus. And the Yidden in the worst place of Mitzrayim, they would still hold themselves strong. Okay, now we come to Interessante Zach. The Shaila is like this. The Yidden were 210 years in Mitzrayim. They were not Nichshel Berayas. That was the main reason why they were Zeich to the Geula. Achas Hoysev Peresam HaKosav. There was only one story. The Torah spoke about it first, and it was Mefarsim it. And everyone else was clean. For 210 years in the lowest Madrega and the worst Matzavim, they held themselves strong with Kedusha, but Tahira. Gal Noel Achoisti Kalo, Gal Noel. We spoke about this, Varichis. This was the main schus. There was other schus also, Shinsham, Misham, and Abisham, but this was the main schus. And they were strong. And they were Zeich to the Gula. How is it that after 40 years in the Midbar, being with Moshe, Harim, Miriam, being with the Nane Kovid, the Slav and the Mon, and Be'erisha Miriam, It's unbelievable. It's mamash being head of Shechina. All of a sudden, they get an asayan, and they were nichshel in a big way. What's going on over here? How could it be that after all these years, it's now already 250 years since they were in Mitzrayim, we saw Chazal said since Avraham Avinu's times, they're going like another 100 years, they were never ever nichshel, and here we go, and they're nichshel. What happened over here? Not only they were nichshel with umos which they were never nichshel. Umos other were never nichshel. How could that be? How could that be? And the Medrash actually addresses this issue. The Medrash Yalkut seems to address this issue. Until they can shittim his shasim ma'imov, it's in his nus. The Medrash in the first Mahalach blames it on the waters of shittim. Was a very powerful, intoxicating water. Maybe it was some drugs or something, and that was guiding them to be nichshel. Wasn't even their fault. Bilam used that opportunity of that place in order to be machshel them, because they were already shvach because of what they had. But then the Medrash has another mahalach. The Medrash says that when Bilam said his nevuah, his nevuah was heard out. All the Yidden heard his nevuah, heard him say all the brachas and the moedige zachen that they were zeicher to, all the nevias of Moshe Mashiach, things that even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say. Bilam was megala. Bilam was megala, the biggest madregas, biggest nevuahs of the Asad Lava in the Torah coming from Bilam, and the Yidden got pumped. They were very nizgah. The fichach gova datan shel Yisrael. They became balgaivist. Gova datan shel Yisrael. Ibole de takola, and they got so pumped about themselves. They became nichshel. They became gaiva. They became confident, and they let their guard down, and they were nichshel. As this steht in Chazal, just to add a little topping to it, that until now, every time they had an enemy, it got destroyed. The enemy got destroyed. It was Mitzrayim, it was the other nations, Amalek, and everything. Abishur took care of them. Sichin, V'oig. Abishur took care of all the umos that started up at the Yidden. Sichin is later, but Abishur destroyed them. All the nations that started up with them, and all the umos were scared of them. Fine, but what happened over here was another madrega. That Abishur didn't destroy the umos Olam. He made those two enemies, Balak and Bilam, get together to try to destroy them. And what happened? They gave them brachas, they gave them nevuah of the Asad Lava, the biggest madregas of nevuah and everything. So Abishur actually turned the hearts of the enemy for the Yidden. He controlled them, and they became a source of bracha. That was another intoxicating madrega of Geula, which madregas that Klal Yisrael was zeicher. And because they became so confident in themselves, they lost their guard, and they were nichshel. And the Gemara in Brachas is marich in this concept that the only reason why the Yidden were nichshel in the Egel was because they had so much gashmias. V'di zahav, Kesef is because of the gold and silver that you gave to them, they were nichshel in the egel. They had so much gashmius. Also, it says that the Gemara says that a lion doesn't roar from wheat. Only after he eats a good supper does he roar. Only from a good piece of a zebra does he roar. The same thing, the Gemara goes on in different cases. He says a cow doesn't kick only when it eats good stuff, not when it eats beans. And the Gemara brings down, when you get gaiva, you forget about the Eibishter. So, what do we see from here? You could be nizer for hundreds of years under the hardest madrega in Mitzrayim, and under all these temptations, and stay strong. Because you realize the difference between the goyim and you, the lowly goyim, and who you are, you know where you come from. But when the time comes, and you are doing so good, and you have the big madregas, and you have all the gachnis, and all the gashmis, You leave your guard, go. And all of a sudden, you get confronted with an asoyin, and then many people will be nichshel. The person can't leave his guard down. He has to know there might be a situation that comes up, he might lose himself. When a person's ready for the fight, he won't. Over here, there was a situation, there was pritzes, there was a geschmack of waters, and the girls came out, confronted them, and they were all, and they heard nevuah, they were living a dream. Everything was amazing. In the midbar, they let their guard down, and they were nichshel. A person has to know, he has to be ready for every situation. You think, Bez Hashem, you'll be strong in Hilchas Nida, you'll be strong in holding yourself in many hard times. You go through hardest times with your wife in different situations. And people make it through. It's not so easy to be a chas and kala. And when you be a mitzvah, and you make it through the hardest times. But then, and you're all sure, you go on vacation, things are going good, and she becomes a nida, chas v'shalom, and you're intoxicated for where you are, and you fall through. Or whatever it is, can be different reasons. A person has to be on guard, and he has to watch himself all the time. He has to take life serious. He has to understand that these are my red lines, and I don't go by it. I don't let go of this, no matter what the situation is. You can't get mofuta. Can't forget of where you're heading to from, and indulge yourself into a gashmis and just forget about everything. You always gotta keep your guards up. Understand the priorities in life, and make sure that understand that if Klaus after hundreds of years are not nichshel, and the biggest madrega they were nichshel because it caught them off guard, that I could also for sure have that nisayon, and Hashem should help me have that in mind. That you understand, when you understand the enemy, you could, Bez Hashem, overcome him. May Hashem help us be strong and overcome all the nisyanis. Shabbos.